Exam is a war, and you don't win war by strength. You win wars by strategy. This is one of my favorite quotes, which is by none other than my dad, who is a teacher. And I love this quote. I love this quote, and I follow this whenever I'm preparing my for any of the exams that I have. The reason is that if you go blind in your approach towards studying, if you're just like, okay, whatever I get, I'll I'll just study, then you don't really have a strategy, a clear plan of action. In Hindi, we call it gadhe wali mehnat versus ghode wali mehnat. That means hard work of a donkey versus hard work of a horse. Hard work of a donkey is directionless. Hard work of a horse is with a clear direction. So, the first thing you need to do whenever you start studying is know your resources and know your territory. What do I mean by that? Resources, what do you have? You have AI. In AI you have ChatGPT, which is a text-based AI which can explain you stuff, and you have Notebook LM type stuff which can teach you stuff basically in simple words, simple analogies and examples. Then you have your time. You probably have other people who can probably teach them if you trust them. Honestly, I personally, you can call it a superiority complex or narcissism, but I love to study alone because always I've studied alone. I'm a single child, so I've always studied alone, and I do not trust anyone else. It's more like if I do bad in the exam, I don't want to blame it on them. That being said, if you have someone who's great at studying and they would like to teach you, then I would say just go for it. Just ask them, because the amount of energy, mental capacity you'll spend trying to figure it out on your own versus someone who's already understood it, them explaining it to you, the other person explaining it to you would be easier. Next resource, you have time, you have energy, you have the AI stuff, and you also have your mental capacity. Believe it or not, mental capacity is, I won't say limited, but limited to a certain extent. You can refresh it, but at some point you just get diminishing returns. Like, you have perfect mental clarity, and then you're studying, you grasp concepts very quickly. You can study a lot of stuff in 1 hour. But when you are not that mentally available and mentally clear, especially that happens after lunch for me at least. If you're not mentally clear, then you just can't grasp the topics. For example, today it happened with me that I ate a lot of oily food, and after that I just couldn't get myself to record these videos. I was just sleeping, and if I would have recorded, I would have just bombed it. It would not have been good. Right now I'm in a better state. I can still record. I can articulate my thoughts well. So you should know your territory. You should know your resources. Also, let's say you have 5 modules. You have two options: either give equal time to them or give different amounts of time to them. If you are just studying, I mean, very little time, like very less times it happens that you give equal time to all of them, and it actually makes sense, because some concepts are different and some concepts you already know, some concepts take time. So you need to understand how you would approach. I'm not giving specific examples here because it would be very very specific to the courses that I'm studying. It would not be relevant to the broad audience that I'm making this video for, who are studying across different courses. But let me just open one of my syllabi and show it to you. I mean, illustrate how I do it. So this is my syllabus. It's of one of the subjects called operating systems. I'm taking this one because it's a good combination of theory plus numericals. So operating systems and structure. Let's say, let me talk about the end, the last how I was studying. This was a subject in which I got 94 out of 100. So operating systems and structures, process scheduling, threads and deadlocks, process synchronization, memory and file management, managing devices, security, protection and virtualization. how I would approach is that this topic, low weightage and all, honestly this is just theory. What how this topic was structured is that it was basically like 5 6 or 7 questions, and you just have to memorize points of this. So I did this one first because these four operating system, monolithic, layered, microkernel and modular, you just have to memorize what they are, what is the advantages and disadvantages. And I think another was OS design issues, and another OS feature OS services. Yeah, OS services and OS design issues. That were the major questions. So how do I know that? Because in the first, like, we have three exams in VIT: Cat 1, Cat 2, and FAT. So this was a Cat 1 portion. So for that I had already prepared for it. So I knew this, so I just have to just recap it. So I devoted the least amount of time to this, and I just started this first, and I went right through it. Like I completed it very fast. Next, we had this one: process scheduling, threads, and deadlocks. Now this had some numericals, which was FCFS, SJF, and priority, round robin, SRTF, preemptive priority. Now these numericals are, I've already done it in Cat 1, so I will just do one numerical for each of these: FCFS, SJF, priority, round robin, SRTF, preemptive priority. Not all of them, but you should need to understand. Like right now, you need to be very honest with yourself that what is the minimum number of numericals you need to do to cover the entire syllabus. So once you're done with that, I just did one numerical per question. Then I verified my answers with ChatGPT, and then I was done. Now deadlocks, yeah. Then we had another important question here, which was Banker's algorithm. That also I had done in Cat 2. So this one took a little bit more time because it's a complex topic. So I practiced like two questions I think there, and then theory I just skimmed because this is mostly numerical based subject. Deadlocks may I studied a little bit of theory. Now this module I had not studied at all. Okay, mostly, I mean, we had Cat 2, which is open book. So open book studying is basically not studying. So this I had not studied. Here I had done some numericals, uh, first fit, best fit, worst fit, segmentations, FIFO, optimal LRU. This was in one of my subjects in the first sem, which was computational structures. So then I did the numericals from here, and in module 5 I had already studied this part: FCFS, SSTF scan, all of this stuff. This I had already studied. So what you might be observing here is that I'm just getting those topics out of the way which are easy and which I've already studied. This is my strategy for studying as well as doing the exams. So that I just am prepared for, like, I just get these out of the way, so I have less things to deal with. Then how I started is that I think I did this in one day, like this whole module I did it in one. We had a lot of, like, 4 or 5 days we had for the gap, and I think I did this in, I think, half a day probably, and then I devoted one full day to this and this module because this was also a few questions, and this one, the theory part was very less in this one. So this and this I did in, I think, 1.5 day, and then this one took a lot of time, or a decent amount of time, so I had to, like, really get down to it. So I honestly studied till late night, basically the whole night, then went and gave the exams on a Red Bull. So that is how I would approach planning my day, like the time that I had. So this I did in not even half a day, probably 1/3, like just 2 3 would be less, 4 5 hours. I did this in 4 5 hours, and then numericals, whatever I had already known, I did all of those in one day, like one full day I took first day. Then I did these theory part of the first module here, and then I did all the numericals which I had known. So I removed that stuff, and some of that stuff went to the other day as well. And yeah, then what happened was that I created I just studied the theory parts of this one, I think, for a little, like half a day, on the next day. And then on the next day I did both of these ones, the module 3 and module 4, the remaining part of this. And then module 5 I devoted, I think, 1 or 1.5 days to it. So yeah, how much is that? One day there, two. I think in 4 days, which was the gap, I was able to complete the entire syllabus. By complete, I mean understanding the concepts, memorizing those which required memorization, memorizing the theoretical topics, and doing the numericals such that I can do them in the exam as well. Now, for context, I also skipped some parts which did come in the exam, but I somehow managed to do it. So that's also that, because I had already studied it in Cat 1. So yeah, that's what I did in this one. Was that I had not studied at all, which I would not recommend. I'm a big fan of consistent studying, but in that case, I had to use what I had. So that was that. So I appreciate you watching this one. We'll see you in the next one.